When Resident Evil 7 came out, it blew people away with its strong emphasis on horror, focused narrative, and overall departure from what fans had come to expect. This set a new precedent for the series and left people wondering how they were going to follow it up. And when Resident Evil 8 finally came out, it became clear that they did not keep any of that. Instead of leaning into survival horror, they just made it as weird as possible, adding in werewolves, hot vampires, and a big tubby guy that follows you around all the time. If you're looking for a live action actor, hit me up. Now, at first I didn't really like this, but as I progressed through the game and let go of what I wanted it to be, I started to appreciate it for what it truly is, which is a very weird, but very good Resident Evil game. The story picks up with our boy Ethan Winters 3 years after the Baker family incident of Resident Evil 7. In the 3 years since then, Ethan and his wife Mia had a child together named Rose, a beautiful little baby girl. It's a peaceful evening in the Winters household, and Mia is making dinner while Ethan takes Rose upstairs and puts her to sleep. Now, the amount of detail in this house is actually insane. They did not have to go this hard, but they absolutely did. They filled each room with realistic clutter, selling the idea that this house is actually lived in by two people raising a baby. There are Easter eggs to previous games and items that foreshadow what is to come. An entire photo album filled with pictures and details of their lives since Rose was born. And if you don't feel like, actually playing the game, you can just kick back and watch some TV. Whoa, look at that. It's my other Resident Evil video that I made on Resident Evil 7 that you can go and watch right after this one. You could also go down and subscribe and like. That would be great. If we get like 30,000 likes, I'll make another Resident Evil video. Or maybe not, I don't know. I'm gonna make whatever I want, but you should still subscribe though. Now, this is one of those things that could be easily overlooked, but when you stop and think about how much effort went into crafting the details in this house, that you're only in for about 5 minutes, by the way, it really puts into perspective how much care was put into the game. Another thing, and this may not be intentional, but I love that Resident Evil 8 starts you in this warm, homey kitchen, juxtaposing the rotten, bug-infested kitchen of Resident Evil 7. Makes it feel like these characters have finally achieved some semblance of normalcy. Life is good. Everything was going great until Chris Redfield, a recurring Resident Evil character, showed up and filled Ethan's wife Mia with 4,000 bullets. Brother, I think she is dead. And to top it all off, he kidnaps baby Rose right out of her crib. But hang on, I'm sure Chris has got a great explanation for all of this, and he's gonna tell us right now, right Chris?
Ethan, no.
No? What do you mean? What do you mean by no? Maybe I'm misunderstanding. Is there just... Now, when I first played this, I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was the dumbest thing they could have done. Seemed like Chris Redfield just got thrown in there for fan service, and frankly, I haven't liked anything they've done with that character since Resident Evil 5, and even that one was a little questionable. But really, it came down to the fact that I expected survival horror, and all of this was hilariously stupid. My opinion looking back though, it has fully changed, and as we go through the game, you'll see why. Ethan wakes up to the sound of a phone ringing and wreckage surrounding him. After being knocked out by Chris and his team, Ethan was being transported somewhere, but didn't make it to that destination as the convoy crashed. And in classic Resident Evil fashion, the only way forward is through a dark, creepy forest. It's clearly a path not commonly traveled as the trees are bundled closely together. This, along with the intense fall off of your flashlight, makes the forest feel eerily claustrophobic. And this scene may feel a little familiar to those of you who've played Resident Evil 7 and 4, as both of those games start off pretty much the exact same way. Just in 7, they got the Netflix goes to Mexico filter. And the similarities do not stop there. While yes, Resident Evil 8 is a direct continuation of the story from Resident Evil 7, it is also a spiritual successor to Resident Evil 4, this being reflected mostly in the atmosphere and overall tone. And the horror from 7 has been dialed back in favor of something more fantastical that doesn't take itself too seriously. This doesn't mean it isn't scary. As a matter of fact, when this game wants to be scary, it is some of the best horror in the series. The horror is just used sparingly, which again, at first really left me disappointed. But by the end, I realized this was the best thing they could have done. It made those moments that they did use horror hit so much harder. It's almost like Resident Evil 4 and 7 had a baby, and this is what we got. But I'd say this doesn't become obvious until you squeeze through the cracks in the mountain and first lay your eyes on the village. The developers wanted to make it feel like you were in this isolated, haunted village, and so they surrounded it with tall, overbearing mountains. As much as I love the atmosphere in the village, I will say it's one of the more generic locations, which kind of sucks that in a game called Village, the village is the least interesting part, but it kind of did that to themselves. In Resident Evil 4, the game also starts in a village, but that one in Spain, and you get there exactly the same way and do pretty much all the exact same things we're doing here. It was such an iconic location in that game, and the intention here seems to just be rehashing that. Someone's been beating this thing. And I don't know, I just feel like this village is visually kind of flat. A lot of the same colors, nothing really distinguishing between the different houses. There's not a lot you can get from exploring other than just loot. But I do think the village has some great visual storytelling, like this comically large bowl of eggs. It clearly tells the story of someone who dropped a comically large bowl of eggs. The village itself is completely wrecked. It looks like someone got drunk and had a really good time on a tractor. And also hates goats. There's really only one house left that looks lived in. Oil lamps still lit, food left on the stove, and a bunch of goat skulls on the wall. Now this has got to be our goat hater.
No, friendly.
Who are you? Who sent you?
Nobody. There was an accident down on the road and... What's going on?
Oh no. They're coming.
Who is? What the hell was that? What the... Shit!
It turns out this guy doesn't hate goats at all. What he hates is, oh my god, that's a lot of dead bodies. What he hates is werewolves. This is what I'm talking about when I say this is the weirdest Resident Evil game. This franchise is known for doing some crazy shit, but it generally always comes back to that traditional zombie storyline, or at least leans more into the traditional horror. But Resident Evil Village is a straight up monster movie, and the werewolves are just the first taste of that. Technically, they're called lichens, originally conceptualized as a primitive kind of zombie, but over time became a wild wolfman creature. It was kind of hard to wrap my head around this direction. Werewolves just seemed like such a cheesy idea, and my immersion really took a hit around this point in the game. It started to feel like a weird dream that Ethan was having, rather than a continuation of his story. That being said, I do think the execution of the lichens was done very well. The designs were treated with such care that even though conceptually they were kind of corny, they were still pretty scary looking. They also have the most design variety of any enemy in the franchise history. Compare them to previous enemies in the series, and I might say these are the best of the grunt enemies. They have such a vicious energy about them and move in a supernatural way that makes fighting even just one of them very intense. One thing I really liked that they added was the ability to barricade doors and hide from them rather than fighting. Though locked in this little house, the lichens begin to surround the building, breaking down the barricades.
Hello. If there are any survivors out there, come to Luiza's house near the fields.
Near the fields? Yeah, thanks for being specific. Evading the lichens is the best way to deal with them, and there's a couple of ways the game gives you to do so. One is obviously barricading the doors. You also have these underground passages and the overall design of the village that usually has another path that you can sneak through. And also these sacks of flour that act as smoke bombs for some reason. Yeah, it's goofy, but I promise, it gets way weirder. This is not the hill you want to die on. Eventually though, they will find you, and when they do, you'll notice that they're a lot smarter than the zombies this series is known for. They'll climb roofs to get up to you. Some carry torches and weapons, and they tend to move in packs, so if you see one, odds are there's more around the corner. This section here is just about surviving a certain amount of time as they come at you in hordes. What an original idea. This is really good. It's just, wow. As long as you stay away from them though, there is no problem at all. Oh shit, he big. That's a big boy. This is the werewolf boss, Urius, once the proud leader of this village, and now he's 10 foot tall and got a big ass hammer. It's crazy how life goes. If you've ever played Black Ops Zombies, then all those nights training on Kino are about to pay off. You just kind of run in a circle until the cutscene shows up. I don't think I can be an adventurer anymore. The Lycans have all coordinated and have you surrounded, but just before they kill you, something calls them away. I'm really not sure what. I don't know what did it. Something did it though. They ran away. I beat the game. I still don't know. I don't know. And in the distance, we see a mysterious hag slowly walking away. The hag just vaguely talks about someone named Mother Miranda and then walks away ominously. Not exactly the most helpful, but she does give us a clue in telling us that whoever Mother Miranda is, that's who brought Rose here. At this point, the village opens up a little more, allowing you to walk around, discover secrets, find key points to come back to later, and save your game at the iconic typewriter. It may not seem like much if you're not familiar with the series, but the typewriter is a staple for Resident Evil. First introduced in the very first Resident Evil game, and it's a huge part of what made that game so tense. Walking into a save room and hearing that iconic save room theme unique to each game, that moment of respite to save your game, organize your items, and come up with a game plan is such a huge part of these games. I'm just really glad they realized this and brought it back. Where's the item box? Have you seen it? It's like a wooden crate. It should be around here. Somebody is playing a sick fucking joke on me. Where is item box Resident Evil 8?
Here's where Bisley goes berserk.
It's actually not that big of a deal. I mean, yeah, I wish it had item boxes, but it's not like Resident Evil 0 where I was dropping shit on the floor because I had nowhere to put it. Rarely that I find myself running out of space in this game, and that's due to another feature that we're not ready for. We'll talk about it later. If we're dropping complaints about the game though, the lack of an FOV slider is embarrassing. Sometimes in my gameplay, you might see this little white dot. That is not an editing mistake. It is because I installed a mod to increase the FOV, and this is the flashlight. I am not playing a game on less than 100 FOV. I'm a grown man, for God's sake. And with my increased field of vision, I came across this little map reminding me of where the survivors were held up. All I had to do was get there. The way up is through a field of straw. Posted throughout are rudimentary statues of goat bone, effigies meant to ward off evil. This shit does not work. And at the end of the path are the first normal people that we meet here. A woman tending to her father who's been badly injured by the Lycans. If we do nothing for these people, they're sure to be eaten alive by Lycans. The only way to help them is to get them inside Luiza's house.
Luiza! Open up, it's me, Elena!
Stop shouting. You'll draw the monsters.
The survivors are just a little bit suspicious of outsiders, but thankfully, Elena vouches for us and we're taken into safety. From that entire village out there, these people, they're all that's left.
All that's left? There is no one left.
The villagers talk a little bit about Mother Miranda, and it's super weird, but it kind of paints a picture for what's going on here. Seems like Mother Miranda is a religious figure. You can find paintings and shrines all around the village of her. She is pretty much their goddess, and even though their goddess doesn't do anything about the werewolves killing them all, they still see fit to pray to her.
Great ones, hear our voice.
Give us this day our daily bread.
All on thee. Within the endless
Ritual, and then have a blue 42. Eat a pickle pepper.
and in death. We give you glory.
Mother Miranda. So glad we all knew the words there. The villagers, like the village, were designed to be stuck in time. Based on a mixture of gothic and modern imagery, outfits and hair from the 1960s were also used as reference in designing them. It's all very fitting for the setting. I just wish that their personalities were given as much thought as their clothes. They definitely have some character for the short time you interact with them, but that's the problem. They're on a screen for maybe 10 minutes. Having actual survivors that the player cares about could have been a huge opportunity to provide depth to the village. At one point, this may have even been the plan plan considering that in the trailers, they show villagers just scattered around the village doing normal things. But sadly, none of that made it into the final game, and instead, the father that we just rescued goes full Team Jacob. We rush his daughter Elena into the other room to save her. Everyone else can suck it, I guess. It almost makes it seem like Elena's gonna be an important character, or a character at all. But after we solve some puzzles together, she just calls it quits. Decides she doesn't want to live anymore. Here, I'll help you out. Just take my hand.
Ethan, go.
What? What are you talking about? Don't just get up here.
Save your daughter.
Wait, no, it's like 4 feet. Just come up. No. What is wrong with you? Stupid! Think! Yeah, that was stupid. Those people are stupid. This is the lowest point in the game, which I would actually say is a good thing. It happened pretty fast, and everything beyond it is kind of awesome, especially because we get to go into the freaking vampire castle. Oh, check it out. Castle has free Wi-Fi. Not so fast! Connecting to a public Wi-Fi leaves you open to a security breach. Anyone can set up a public Wi-Fi, and connecting to it will allow whoever set it up to collect your data. But connecting with NordVPN, the sponsor of this video, will give you the extra layer of protection that you need. It'll also allow you to access things that may not be available where you live. So if, say, Lady Dimitrescu had my favorite website blocked, or it just wasn't available here, I could just connect to one of the thousands of servers across 60+ countries, masking my connection as being from the country of the server I connected to be able to access it again. Take Netflix, for example. They have a ton of content that's region locked. You might live in a country where the show Dexter isn't available, a tragedy easily fixed by using NordVPN to connect to North America, where you can give in to the dark passenger and watch all 8 glorious seasons. Now you don't gotta watch the whole thing through clips on YouTube Shorts. Go to nordvpn.com/bizlychannel for a huge discount on a 2-year plan, plus 4 additional bonus months. It is risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Get it at nordvpn.com/bizlychannel or click the link in the description below. A drawbridge leads you into this dingy cave that slowly fills out with ornate stonework. Just as you think you're about to go up and meet Dracula himself, a somehow even cooler guy shows up.
Well. Didn't think anyone was left. You must be pretty tough. Huh.
Who the fuck are you?
Oh, you're not local. Even better.
Why can't he Magneto? What's going? Why? What the? The man dragging us is named Heisenberg. His voice might be familiar if you played Baldur's Gate 3. This is the guy who voices a star, and he is a star on this game. Hype it up. He's currently dragging us to the trial of Ethan Winters.
The man is of no real use to anyone else, and my daughters do so love entertaining foreigners. Furthermore, I can assure you, if you entrust the mortal to House Dimitrescu, my daughters and I shall deliver to you the finest.
Way, ugly! I wanna see! He's awake!
Billy, shut the fuck up!
In the center is Mother Miranda, and around her, the people bickering about who gets to kill you are the 4 lords of the village, a political alliance of noble families who control the mountainous region. I ripped that straight off the wiki. I didn't know how else to say it, like word for word. The 4 lords are Heisenberg, Lady Dimitrescu, Moreau, and the doll Angie.
Shut your damn hole! And don't be a sore loser! Go find your food somewhere else.
Quiet now, child. Adults are talking.
This little introduction for them all gives us a pretty good insight into each of their personalities. They're pretty much all treated as religious figures in the village, with Mother Miranda sitting at the head. And you can actually find this shrine in the village kind of visually depicting that. The game after this point is structured in sections based around these 4 lords. It's the same exact formula as Resident Evil 7, where they had distinct sections based around each of the bakers. Every section pushing the overall plot forward as much as it is a peek into the life of each antagonist. And my Resident Evil 7 video, which just hit 1 million views, thank you for that, I talked about how I thought each of the bakers represented a different genre of horror movie. Most notably Jack Baker being the embodiment of the slasher film. And Resident Evil 8, while less overt, does pretty much the same thing, but instead of representing horror genres, each of the 4 lords represents different monster movies. Zombies, the Wolfman, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Invisible Man, the Mummy, Creature from the Black Lagoon. These creature features dominated the horror genre from the 1930s to the 50s, all part of the shared universal horror movie universe. Most of them shot in black and white, just making do with the technology of the time. It was this genre of film that brought us the on-screen depiction of the zombie. While some of the other creatures saw mainstream success, I think it's pretty clear the zombies kind of surpassed all of that and became a genre of its own, thus making shit like werewolves and Frankenstein seem weird in comparison. I think it was a bold move for Resident Evil to pull from these other, less popular monsters for this game, but it's a decision I actually love. My real problem was that I went into this game expecting to enjoy it the same way I did Resident Evil 7, when it is something completely different that embraces the wacky nature of the monsters, still taking them seriously and keeping a semi-consistent tone, but not shying away from the weird shit. It's also not really presented in the same way as Resident Evil 7. Once it's decided that Heisenberg is the one who gets to kill Ethan, we get a chance to run away.
Let's see what you're doing. Ethan Winters.
The path forward is extremely narrow. There's no thought that needs to go into what route you'll take, no puzzles to solve. It is very much like a roller coaster ride. Specifically this one at Disney Animal Kingdom, where there's a Yeti in a mountain. It's like almost exactly like that. But that one you get to go backwards and it is really scary. This theme park attraction vibe is coded into the DNA of Resident Evil 8. Yes, there are moments where survival horror and puzzle solving become important, but the majority of this game's DNA is built around being a fast-paced adventure on rails, as demonstrated here in this level. It's something that while researching for this game, I noticed a lot of hardcore Resident Evil fans did not resonate with. Mostly because this is completely different from what many would consider to be the identity of this franchise. Methodical, atmospheric puzzle games that require exploration and critical thinking skills to progress. I can partly sympathize with that perspective because this is the exact opposite of that. This is some brain-off goop that does not require thinking. But while I can sympathize, I wildly disagree. Expecting a game series, especially one as long-standing as Resident Evil, to retain the same core gameplay for every single iteration is incredibly short-sighted. And it would go against everything those games were about in the first place. Resident Evil 1 is the game that built the survival horror genre. It coined the term survival horror. Pushing boundaries, trying new things is what made this series great in the first place. Why now should they stop searching for something new, experimenting with ideas? Just because something is a sequel does not inherently make it a continuation of the original work. It may build off of it, but no matter what, a sequel will always be its own work, a piece that deserves to be judged on its own merits rather than exclusively held up in comparison.
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters.
How do you know my name?
Anyone who is anyone has heard of the likes of you. A hero searching for his daughter. Though I must say, that castle arouses suspicion.
Yeah, and so do you.
I am but a humble merchant.
Here?
Oh, forgive my manners. Call me the Duke.
Like he said, this is the Duke. I didn't like him at first, but after seeing him a few times, I understand why he won Streamer of the Year. The Duke acts as the shopkeeper of Resident Evil 8, a concept taken from Resident Evil 4, but stuffed full of Big Macs. He just kind of appears in various places around the map, selling you things like ammo and healing items. Oh, and also upgrades to your inventory space that make it so big you can hold pretty much everything. This is what I was talking about. He's one of my favorite characters from the game for sure, and that probably has a lot to do with how he's voiced. Aaron LaPlante does a really good job of bringing this eerie yet warm vibe to the character that makes every interaction with him fun. Now, the Duke shows up just in time before the first section begins. Like I said before, the game is broken up into 4 different sections for each of the lords, and the first one doesn't truly begin until we enter the castle of Lady Dimitrescu. Now this castle should tell you everything you need to know about what monster inspired Lady Dimitrescu. Bears. It is my absolute favorite location, design-wise, in the entire game. I wish more of the game took place in this castle. I could have spent 10 hours here alone. The carpets, the furniture, the walls, the candelabras, the metalwork, it is all a love letter to Gothic architecture. It is so fucking cool, it makes me want to start punching things. Because of the game's linear nature, it's not as open as you would expect, which would have been cool to see. But what it lacks in open level design, it makes up for in atmosphere, attention to detail, and vampire women who skewer you and drag you around. Now this plays a fundamental role in making me feel things. The three daughters drag us into the room with their mother, Lady Dimitrescu.
Mother, I bring you fresh prey.
You are so kind to me, daughters. Now, let's take a look at him. Well, Ethan Winters.
Based on the monster Dracula, Lady Dimitrescu is a bloodthirsty vampire living in her Eastern European castle. Her design is pulled straight from the 1930s, and if you noticed, she big. That's because she's also inspired by the Japanese legend of the 8-foot-tall spirit. And the daughters themselves are also based on the wives of Dracula, and they're all meant to represent the femme fatale archetype, or the hot girl horror. Why is it so hard to wiggle my eyebrows? Am I wiggling them? Am I doing it right now? Beautiful women who use their charm to get you so wrapped around your finger that you'd pretty much let them kill you. Can she do that to me? These vampires chain Ethan up in the room and prepare to drain him of his blood. And so naturally, he dismembers himself to get out of it. And if you're wondering how he survives this, then you have clearly forgotten the Resident Evil item that is just a bottle of heal juice. Anytime Ethan gets hurt, he just pours that stuff on and keeps trucking. The goal right now really is to find Rose, and so that means exploring the castle. Now, it's nothing like the other Resident Evil games, but there are still some fairly straightforward puzzles to solve throughout the castle, and I actually like them a lot. Specifically the one where you use the game physics to light the torch. They're simple, but you still have to think about it for at least half a second. So it's engaging, but it still keeps up this rapid fire pace. There is a part of me that wishes Resident Evil 8 was a little more open-ended, but really in this case, just because this castle is so cool, I really wanted to go around and explore, find different things, but there just wasn't a lot to find. The coolest thing here is the winery, which gives you some insight into what they actually do here, which is make some killer wine. And scattered around the castle are different journals that will tell you the story of Lady Dimitrescu. Her name is Alcina, and while her heritage traces back to one of the 4 founders of this village, she originally didn't even live here. She was lured here by the cult leader Mother Miranda and taken down to a crypt beneath the village cemetery and implanted surgically with a parasite called the Cadeau. This caused her body to mutate, giving her power, causing her to grow inhumanly tall, and making her practically immortal. But the problem is she inherited a rare blood disease when she was born, one that even the parasite couldn't cure. Though she lived forever, she would require regular supplies of human blood to stay healthy. She then took ownership of the castle, as was her birthright, and began running the vineyard, as well as conducting her own experiments on the Cadeau parasite, specifically on 3 girls, who she then claimed as her own daughters. You can see pinned to her chest are 3 roses, one for each daughter who has a rose tattooed on their forehead. The 4 then lived here for the next 70 years, extracting the blood from maids and combining it with grapes to create Sanguis Virginis, a traditional Dimitrescu family wine. Okay. You know what, it tastes good, whatever. While the upper part of the castle is well put together, the dungeon underneath is the exact opposite. Hungry feral vampires lumber through these tight spaces, forcing you into combat. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but the combat for this game is actually pretty good. There's not much to it, but the guns feel tight and good to use. The sound design is great, and overall, it is definitely an improvement over the Resident Evil 7 slow, sluggish gameplay. Here, it's a lot faster, and in some cases, it's too fast. Like in the case of switching weapons, it almost looked like Ethan had 3 hands.
Your bullets cannot harm. You stupid man thing!
The 3 daughters act as mini-bosses within the castle, and their fights are pretty mindless, in my opinion. Their mutations make them vulnerable to cold, and we're in a frozen mountain, so all you gotta do is crack a window and they start cracking. The only really threatening one here is Lady Dimitrescu, and after you kill one of her daughters, oh, she gets real mad. At this point, you'll be hunted through the castle by Lady Dimitrescu while you try to find your way. It's a feature that's become pretty common in the Resident Evil games, where the big bad is constantly hunting you. It works very well in Resident Evil 2, 3, and 7, but here, I just find Lady Dimitrescu is too slow and too big to really do anything to you. She gotta be pushing at least 325. It's hard to get up and moving at 325. She also has to crouch through doorways, so there's no opportunity for getting jump scared, and you have ample opportunity to just run away. In the main room, there are 4 statues with slots for masks to be placed. The rest of your time in the castle will be spent finding these masks and killing the other daughters, which is fun for what it is, but nothing too crazy. It doesn't get good until you find all the masks and open the door. It leads out to a coffin containing a knife the knife that kills vampires, I guess. The fabled vampire killing knife. I find this so funny. I don't know if you've ever seen Supernatural, but they do this thing on that show where there's always a weapon that kills the exact thing they need to kill. Like, there's the angel knife, and then there's the kill everything gun, and then they have the kill the specific most things spear. After a certain point, that shit was hilarious. Something about finding the knife that kills vampires just reminded me of that and got me chuckling, but it works. Lady Dimitrescu gets stabbed, which doesn't kill her right away, but it does give us a chance, thus starting the first true boss fight. Lady Dimitrescu turns into a large dragon, harkening back to the original Dracula myths. The name Dracula even coming from the Romanian word for dragon being drac. Almost like a centaur, her bottom half takes the form of an entire dragon, while her top half remains as kind of like a rider. Shooting her body does more damage, so aiming there is usually the play. It's hard to make a boss fight like this really work, but making her a flying enemy and giving her fairly varied attack patterns keeps the entire thing engaging while also being an amazing set piece. Smashing through the castle stone, unloading entire clips into her face, it is fun and paced very well. With Lady Dimitrescu dead, we find this jar and a pathway leading out. The marketing for this game centered so heavily around this boss and this castle that I was certain this was not the end, but this is really the last we see of Lady Dimitrescu. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this in the comments. For me, it's disappointing because I felt like she had so much more character potential, especially to be a foil to Ethan. We're going around killing her daughters and she played a role in kidnapping ours. There could have been moments where they spoke on a parental level, on a human level, and even while being adversaries, at least understood each other. I also think it's just a missed opportunity to not have opened up that beautiful castle and let us explore it for a little longer. I'm all for a fast-paced game, but it almost feels like a disservice to the environment designers to have their hard work be nothing but a blur in your peripheral as you scream past it. There's not a dull moment in the entire section, but it did feel cut short, which ultimately just left me wanting more.
There you are. I had a feeling you would pop up here.
Oh, what up, fat boy? Hey, castle was kind of a dead end.
Is that so? I assume you've picked up something of value.
No, not really. Just a jar.
Why, you have your daughter right in your own hands.
No, this is a jar. I'm looking for baby.
Take a closer look. That flask seems to contain her head.
Wait, stop. You're saying this is Rose? Rose has been separated into 4 different pieces and contained within these jars. Killing Dimitrescu got us the first piece, and it's safe to assume the other lords have the rest.